Alright, so welcome back to Dominion Menagerie Part 6. Let's get started with the rest of the events here. Alright, so for 5 money we have Commerce. Gain a gold per definitely named card you've gained this turn. So, if you buy this event and you didn't buy or gain anything that turn, then you won't get anything for purchasing this for 5 money. But let's say you gained a card, but you only had 5 money and you did want to gain a gold. You could buy the Commerce, for instance, and at least gain a gold for the purchase of 5 money. Or if you had, gained obviously a bunch of cards and maybe even bought some cards ahead of time, you could gain a bunch of golds per differently named card you gained that turn. So that's pretty interesting. All right. Then we have one of the coolest events in this expansion, and it's called Populate. You'll gain 1 card from each action supply pile for the purchase of 10 money. That is, wow. That is super powerful. That is really awesome. Another awesome event. Definitely one of my favorite events. Then we have March. Oh, and one other thing. If you were playing with Alchemy and you had vineyards in the expansion, Populate would be very useful in making Vineyard a potion costing card give you ton of victory points at the end of the game. Very, very useful. Or if you were playing with Empires and you were playing with the landmark that rewards you for having tons of cards or tons of differently named cards, this could be very powerful for that too. Alright. Then we have March. For the purchase of 3 money, you can look through your discard pile and you may play an action card from it. So that's kind of interesting. If you had a discard pile. If you purchased this and you had no discard pile, your discard pile was empty, then obviously you wasted your money. And of course, if your discard pile was, had only victory cards, for instance, then obviously that would be, waste of money too. Or treasures for that matter, right? Because it's only for action cards. Then we have Enhance. For 3 money, you may trash a non-victory card from your hand to gain a card costing up to 2 more than it. So you couldn't do this with a victory card, but you could do it with a Curse/Wasteland, right? Because those aren't victory cards. You could do it with a treasure card, you could do it with an action card. As long as it wasn't a victory card, you could do it with one of those. So it's sort of like a remodel, except with remodel from the base game, you could still trash that that estate in order to gain something more than it. This one is, obviously a little bit weaker than that, obviously. Enhance. Then we have Toil. For 2 money, you'll get a plus buy, and then you may play an action card from your hand. So that's pretty cool. Who knows? There's a lot of possibilities with Toil. You can do a lot of things. Then we have Seize the Day for 4 money. Once per game, take an extra turn after this one. So this is how this would work if you played with Seize the Day. If you purchase this and this was your second time you purchased Seize the Day, then obviously you wasted your money because you can only do this effect once per game. You can purchase this as many times as you want, but it means that only the first time you purchase this will you get this effect. And the effect is taking an additional turn after the turn that you purchased Seize the Day. That's really, really powerful. This is another one of those really cool events. I like that a lot. So you get to take 2 turns in a row. But of course, all of your opponents would also get to take 2 turns in a row as well. So that's really cool. And here's why Seize the Day is an awesome name for this card. Let's say you purchased a province, and for your last 4 treasure, assuming you had an extra buy, you decided to buy Seize the Day because you hadn't done it yet for the game, because there was only 1 province sitting in the supply pile left. You could seize the day to take an additional turn where you possibly could get that province. So that's a really cool event. Seize the Day. That is definitely seizing the day if you do it for that reason. Awesome, awesome event. Then for 2 money, we have Pursue. You get a plus buy. Name a card, reveal the top 4 cards from your deck, put the matches back, and discard the rest. There could be some uses for that occasionally. Then for 2 money, we have Gamble. Plus 1 buy, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a treasure or action, you may play it. Otherwise, discard it. So that's kind of interesting. I'd have to say that's a strong gamble, though. Then we have Desperation. The cost is 0 money. Once per turn, you may gain a curse. If you do, plus 1 buy and plus 2 treasure. Now, why would you do that? Well, there's only one thing I could think of. If you were truly desperate. Let's say you had 7 money. You wanted to buy that province, which is 8, right? You only have 7. You could purchase this event. You'd get a curse, or a wasteland for me. You'd get that additional buy, and you'd get the 2 extra money, and that would be enough for that, obviously, enough for getting that province. So that would be worth doing it. If you were desperate enough, that would be worth doing that for instance. And then for our last event, we have Delay, another one that costs 0 money. You may set aside an action card from your hand at the start of your next turn. Play it. So this could be very useful if you weren't able to play a certain action card that turn. You could make this very useful for you. So that's a really cool event. And that's a kind of a good name. Delay. Delay that action card for your next turn. That's really cool. All right, so let's see if we can get through some of these ways, if not all of them. Okay, so we have Way of the Horse. Now, if you are playing with horses, or if you watched my other videos and the horses, once they're played, they return to their supply. But if you play an action card, but you do it with Way of the Horse instead, you'll get your 2 cards, you'll get an action, you'll get plus 1 action instead of whatever that action card was, but then you'll also return that action to its pile as well. As long as it had a pile to return to, that action card you would lose. So is it worth it? Probably not. Maybe not. Unless you have too many of a particular action card and you're not going to use it, you could use it, make it more useful for a one-time use and return it to its pile. That's kind of interesting. That would be kind of cool to see how that actually works out as an interesting strategy. I don't know if it would be a good strategy, but it's definitely interesting. All right. Then we have Way of the Owl. Draw until you have 6 cards in hand. So that's pretty interesting. So if you played your action card as Way of the Owl, you would draw until you have 6 cards in hand. That's pretty cool. That could come in handy in more ways than one. Who knows? Way of the Otter. If you play an action card, Way of the Otter, you'll get plus 2 cards. Way of the Mule. If you play an action card as Way of the Mule, you'll get plus 1 action and plus 1 treasure instead of whatever it does, obviously. Now, here's an interesting way. So if you play an action card as Way of the Mouse, you'll play the set-aside card, leaving it there. So that's kind of interesting. That's where this makes sense. Because this way has an interesting setup. So here's the setup. I should have said setup first, because it has an interesting setup. Set aside an unused action costing 2 or 3. So you were playing with 10 action cards in the game. You would pick an action card you weren't using in the game that costed 2 or 3. You would set it aside. You'd only set 1 aside, and it would stay there on the table for the rest of the game. Then if you decide to play an action card as Way of the Mouse, you'll play that set-aside card, leaving it there. So that's kind of interesting. That's definitely a really cool way. You could have some fun with that one for sure. Then we have Way of the Monkey. If you play an action card as Way of the Monkey, you'll get plus 1 buy, and you'll get plus 1 treasure. That's kind of a nice picture too. Then we have Way of the Mole. If you play an action card as Way of the Mole, you'll get plus 1 action, you'll discard your hand, and you'll get plus 3 cards. That's pretty cool. And then we'll continue on in the next video. And we'll cover the rest of these in the next video. Alright? Thank you for watching. See you guys in the next video.